Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you're having a great start to your week. I'm going to share my screen with you all here. Today's class is all about Google Drive. We want to make sure everybody feels really comfortable with transitioning kind of to more of a paperless environment, and Google Drive is a great way to do that. So this class is going to be all about sort of turning Google Drive into your online file storage system. So that's going to be today's class. Before we get started, just a couple quick housekeeping items. All of our attendees on the call today are muted. So if you do have a question, make sure you locate the question pane over on the side of your screen. And Victoria Thomas is on the call with me today, and she will be monitoring questions and then also jumping in. I'm sure she'll help me as there's a lot to cover in Google Drive, and so we'll kind of be tag teaming this training. Before we get started with Google Drive, any burning questions that our attendees on the call today have that they want to make sure that we definitely cover when it comes to Google Drive? I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to think through that and type that in the questions pane, just so we make sure that we don't miss anything. All right, well, I don't see anything coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it today. Okay, so Google Drive, you guys can see my screen. I've got my Google Drive kind of pulled up. Drive is just kind of a piece to all of G Suite. You'll hear us refer to G Suite probably from time to time. That encompasses everything from Gmail, Google Calendar, of course, Drive, and then all of the other great Google apps. And you can always locate the other kind of pieces or apps available within Google by this little waffle, the 3x3 grid, always in the top corner of any Google platform that you are in. You can drag these around. So I have Google Drive sort of as one of the top ones in my pane. That's just because I use it a lot and I've dragged it to the top. If you don't see, if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, that's okay. It just might mean that some of your other applications are a little bit further down. But you can always drag those around to whatever order makes the most sense for you. And then it'll stay that way when you're logged into Google. Before we jump in, one other thing I will mention is Drive has a wonderful app that is available on your mobile devices. So I would highly recommend downloading the Google Drive app. And one of my sort of favorite examples of why I love Google Drive is because of the app. I'm in Google Drive and working in it all day on my computer, but then if I'm away from my computer, like let's just say, for example, on vacation, sitting on the beach somewhere, and I have a client that reaches out and says, hey, I need, that repair receipt from when we bought the house and the seller was supposed to fix such and such, can you send me that? And the thing I love about then having the app on my mobile device is I can hop into Google Drive, go right into that client's folder, and share that item with them right away without having to say, oh yeah, sure, I'm on vacation, I'll get you to that next week, or wait till I'm back to my computer. You can share it real time, and that's kind of one of my favorite things about Google Drive. So download the Drive app. So I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a tour of sort of what Google Drive looks like when you're logged in. You have a couple different sections that are worth noting. So first is My Drive. You can kind of see it's highlighted over here on the left in blue. My Drive is sort of likened to my documents on my computer. It's items that I have moved or created in my own drive, and I've organized them however makes the most sense in my mind. So I have created all of these little folders that I have here and organized them in a specific order. The other thing is this quick access. So up here on the top, there are the 5 most recently accessed documents that I was in. So that can be kind of helpful if you're in to get you back to something that you were recently just working in. And then also, I love sort of the search capabilities. So one of the great things about any Google product is it's awesome searching. So if I am looking for a client folder and I can't remember where I put it, or for whatever reason, I just need to pull it up really quickly, I can just type in a keyword. It will bring me, I've got a contact whose email address has that name in it, or if I need to get into a specific folder, I can find it really quickly there. So don't underestimate the power of all of that searching. And you can even take it a step further, searching by maybe something that you accidentally put in the trash or items that you starred. We'll talk about that later. Keywords, date ranges, some really, really robust searching with Google. So use that if you're having a tough time finding something. So that's my drive. The other one that you probably have noticed before is this section called Shared with Me. So Shared with Me are items that someone else has shared specifically with me, and that's kind of where they land. So the Shared with Me section is kind of more of a catch-all of all the stuff that I didn't create, that someone shared with me so we could collaborate on it, or so that they could just make sure I was aware of something. So that's great. But what you'll start to probably see if you are getting a lot of things shared with you is it's hard to keep those organized because they just kind of land in this landing page. So for example, if there's a document that I want to add to my own drive that has been shared with me, you can either open it. This was our presentation we just had this morning. You can open that document and go under your file section and add to my drive. The other thing you can do is just right click on one of those documents, and from there you can add it to your drive. And then the nice thing about that is I'm going to click on that little organize button because I want to tell my computer exactly where to put this particular presentation. I'm going to put it in my classes folder. This is a new class that we just did today that I don't have another folder for, so it's really easy to create a folder right from this screen. This was a social media class, so I want to put it in the social media folder. And then I can move that presentation to my own drive. I'll show you where that landed. Watch my internet get slow. That would not be ideal. Oh goodness. There we go. Okay, so that document now landed in my quick access because I was just in it. But remember, I put it in my ADC classes folder, and there it is in my social media. And this can be helpful. There's a number of reasons that you'll want to add stuff to your own drive. Sometimes someone might share a document with you as view only, meaning you can look at it, but you can't edit it. And if you want to edit it or use it for another reason later, you'll have to add that to your drive, and then you can edit it from there. So that's kind of a nice way for you to get those shared documents organized into your own drive. So just notice that you've got shared with me and then my drive. So sometimes if you are having a tough time finding something in my drive, it just might mean that it was shared with you and you haven't yet moved it into your drive. Okay, so two different sections. The other one, if we have any listeners on the phone today that are maybe a support staff person, like maybe you work in an office or you are on a team or an admin on a team, you may have a need for what's called a shared drive. So the nice thing about a shared drive is multiple people can collaborate on documents without having to share them back and forth. So for example, Victoria and I have this ADC training share drive, which is where we put pretty much all of our training materials, and then that way I can access them, she can access them, and we don't have to worry about sharing things back and forth. So I just wanted to mention that on today's call in case that's something that sounds interesting to you. Like I said, probably the most common would be if you're on a team and you really do need to collaborate. You can just simply reach out to Tucker's IT support, which is support@talktotucker.com, and they will set up a shared drive for you. So just know that that's an option that exists. Okay, I am back in my drive, or kind of again likened to my documents that would have been on my computer. And we're going to kind of spend the bulk of our time today here. And I'm going to show you how to kind of keep things organized, create new documents, share them, etc. So the first important thing about my drive that you guys should all know is it is unlimited cloud-based storage. So that's great because you can store your work stuff, any personal items that you have, as much as you want. You're never going to run out of storage space. You can put all of that stuff in my drive, and you have access to it anywhere that you have an internet connection. So I gave you the example of having the app on your phone, but also you can access your drive through Okta anywhere you have an internet connection. So a really good example, my mom lives in Florida. When I go to visit her, I don't need to take my actual computer with me because she has a computer at her house. She's obviously got internet. I can simply log in from Okta and get to all of my documents on my drive. And then of course, I also have the app on my phone. So anything I need to get to, I can through my drive. So I always like to share that because I know when I started in real estate, I would have to lug my laptop everywhere with me, even like out to dinner with my husband, because if there was an offer that I anticipated coming in, I needed to have that handy. And now we really don't need that. We have apps on our phone and we have access to Drive from anywhere that there's an internet connection. So the way that you'll add documents to my Drive, you can do so in a number of different ways. So I'm in my Drive right now, and anywhere you're at in Google, you always kind of look for the plus sign, and that's kind of starting something fresh. So I'm going to click on the new or the plus sign right now. And I could create a folder. So for example, I'm going to click on that very top one. I need to create a new folder. I already have a clients folder. So I'm going to call this one clients. If I can type test. So I already have one. I don't need to. But I like kind of starting here. Like all of my client documents are going to go in this folder. And I put the 01 at the beginning because when I sort by name, it always puts that 01 to the top. This is the folder I'm most often in. So I'm going to go ahead and create that folder. You can see it dropped it kind of right here at the top. And then from this folder, say I am starting to work with a new client. From within that folder, I'm in the clients folder. I'm going to create new again. And then the way that this works in my brain is I label everything by last name. So I might have a client with the last name Smith. So I'm going to go ahead and create their folder. And then maybe I'm going to list their house and they're also going to buy a house with me. So within the Smith folder, again, this is how my brain works. I like to keep those transactions separate. So I might have purchase, a purchase folder, and then I might have a listing folder. And then of course from there, when I'm within these particular folders, I can upload documents, I can create, a spreadsheet or a presentation, or, save my BLC searches in here, or whatever it might be, BLC sheets, anything I want to do, I can start adding to these folders. So you can kind of see up at the top, this is just sort of the path of where I am right now. I'm in my Drive, I'm in my clients folder, I'm in the Smith folder, and this is the purchase. So this is all the stuff relating to the purchase of their new home. Okay, now let's say, for example, I'm the travel ban is lifted. Let's start there. And I'm going on vacation and I need Victoria to cover my business for me for whatever reason. And Smiths are active right now. They're looking at houses and they're ready to buy. I might want to share some or all of the Smith folder with my colleague Victoria. So I could right click on whatever I want to share. So I probably don't need to share with her my whole clients folder. And maybe the listing's already sold, let's say. So I just need to share with her the purchase of their new place. So I'm going to right click. Little person with a plus is share. And there's Victoria. I can add a little note for our discussion. And then this is important. What access level do I want to give Victoria? Maybe I don't want her to be able to edit anything, just view. Maybe she just needs to see stuff we already looked at and my notes on this client or whatever it happens to be. So you can change your access level over here on the right. So the eyeball is view only and the pencil is edit. So just be careful when you are sharing things. It's important, you know, to set that access level appropriately. And then by sending that little message, it just gives her a little ping in her inbox like, hey, Victoria, Christy shared the Smith purchase folder with you. And we would have, of course, talked to him and be gone, you know, for the rest of the week. You're in charge of these people, okay? And now you can see next to their folder are these two little people, and it shows that this particular folder is shared with Victoria. And if I ever need to change that for any reason, like I don't want it shared with her anymore, I just come in here and get rid of her. Save changes. Sorry, Victoria.
It's okay.
And then that little person will go away. So the other thing I want to show you is you may already have documents somewhere, like probably on your computer, that you want to maybe consider moving into Google Drive. So that's really, really simple to do. So let's just say, for example, I've got some stuff again saved in the Smith purchase folder and I need to move it into my Google Drive. I can click on the new button again. And here's where I can upload a file or a whole folder. So perhaps there's something on my desktop that I want to, there's a showing report, I'll just go ahead and upload that. It works kind of the same way as creating new, but this is a great way if you're considering kind of migrating from saving everything on your device into Google Drive, which I would highly, highly recommend. Consider doing that. And I'll show you that one more time. I clicked on the new button, whether it's a file or a whole folder, and then you can just basically navigate to where that lives on your computer and open it. And you can do multiple at a time by holding down Shift or Control. It's relatively easy to kind of get your files in there. And again, we sort of suggest this and like getting you guys in the mindset of migrating all of your stuff into Google Drive. Yeah, your computer could crash or get stolen, but what's even more likely happening right now is maybe you have files, like paper files in a filing cabinet at your office, and you know, we're not really supposed to be leaving our houses, and the more people in our office, you know, the more dangerous it is. So if you have everything in Google Drive, you really don't have a reason to go into your office to get anything. You've got access to everything on your computer or on your phone. So no better time than considering sort of migrating and moving stuff into the Drive. Okay, so I just showed you guys how to create folders and how to add information to them, and then how to add collaborators. I showed you how to add Victoria as a collaborator. Any questions so far about adding information or creating folders, or even how to keep things organized? I'll kind of pause here and see if anything comes in over our question pane.
I did have a question from an agent who said that he had been using Google Drive, but then found that he was making duplicate docs in Dotloop. Do you want to talk about why we suggest putting stuff in Drive, even though it also lives in Dotloop, and kind of what the difference between the two of them are?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question, actually. That's probably one of the most common questions we get when we teach Google Drive and or Dotloop. People are like, well, why have both? Like, what's the importance of that? So let me kind of show you. So I'm going to go back into, I'm actually going to go into one of my like live client folders. Let me find a good one. So for example, here is a client that I worked with a few months back, and there's a lot of stuff in their folder that never had to get a signature for whatever reason, like homes we looked at and comps that we ran and notes from our first meetings together of, you know, what was important to them and what they wanted to do, seller net sheets. I do mine in the title services app, so they never really make their way into Dotloop. So all of that stuff to me goes in their Google Drive folder. And then of course, when we close the transaction, oh, of course that has nothing in it. Let me find a better one. Okay, here's a good example. So once we close the transaction, I will then download those key pieces of information from Dotloop. So stuff like, the inspection report and responses, a purchase agreement and counteroffer, the closing docs from the title company, all of that, like really important stuff that was signed, binding, during the transaction. I then download that stuff from Dotloop and put it in a closing docs, that's just what I happen to call it, folder. And then you can see here, I actually shared this closing folder with my clients. And the key here is they only have view-only access because I don't want them to accidentally delete the closing docs that I also would like to retain copies of for many, many years. So I then share just those kind of pertinent pieces of information after the transaction closes. So I'm going to go back kind of one level. So I'm in my clients folder by last name, and then here was the house that they purchased. So here's everything that I just happened to dump in here. Deadlines, pre-approvals, wiring instructions, whatever it happens to be. But then you can see here this closing docs folder actually it's the only one that I shared. You can tell that by the little person. And I shared that with Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, so they had access to it later. So basically the reason behind it is I think Google Drive is good. Well, to me, Google Drive has more than Dotloop has, just simply because there's stuff that isn't signed that you still need later. And then also, it's nice to be able to share with your clients at the end of the transaction one concise folder with just the key pieces of information that they're going to want to have access to later. So that's kind of for me how I differentiate the two. Victoria, what am I missing? Did I explain that in a way that makes sense? Anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with Drive, you have sort of everything every piece of information that you've used throughout the transaction, but not all of that is pertinent for like your admins, or like Christy said, it's stuff that doesn't need signatures on it. It's not stuff that you're going to turn into your admins, the comps that you've run or the notes that you've taken, but here you have it all in one place. So if you need any of that, you have one go-to place where you're going to go and find all of that. But again, it's not all stuff that needs to be turned in Dotloop.
Correct. And think of Drive again, kind of like your filing cabinet. So when I started in real estate, I still had like a filing cabinet at my desk with folders by last name. That's how my brain works, for all my transactions. But I no longer have that. I close the transactions, I scan that stuff in, and I shred all of the paper because I don't need it. I have a virtual copy now in Google Drive. And so everything kind of has now become paperless for me. And that's just kind of what works for me. You might not be there yet, and that's okay. Okay, so back to my Drive. The other thing I want to just show you is how you can star different folders. So for me, I have my clients folder starred, and the way that I do that is I right click. I'm actually do it with this one, and add to starred. And so what that does is it's kind of like your most important folders or documents that you might need to reference quite frequently. And you just right click and you can add a star or remove a star. But at a certain point, you're going to start to have a lot of information in Drive, and it might be a little overwhelming. So you can always just go to the section of just what's starred, and that just kind of gets rid of the stuff that's maybe not as important and shows you just your starred items. And then I'm going to go back to my Drive, and it's going to be slow again. So that's how we did the stars. Okay, the other option that you have within Google Drive, I'm going to go back to my Smith folder. You guys also have the ability, oops, that's not what I wanted to do, to work in Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. So these three are the equivalent of Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft PowerPoint. So this is key because if you're anything like me, before I had access to Google Drive through Tucker, I was paying, I think, $100 a year for Microsoft Office, and I would just have to renew it, you know, every whatever, whenever it came up for renewal. And you don't need that anymore. You have the equivalent for free in Google, like I said, Docs, Sheets, and Slides. So hopefully someone out there is thinking, oh, I can cancel a subscription, yay. Because you have the ability to access all of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a Google Doc in my Smith purchase folder. And as you can kind of see from my screen, this looks really similar to Microsoft Word. This would be a great way for you to take notes for a client, you know, what kind of stuff did they tell me they're looking for in their next home? What's their deadline? Blah, 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 blah. And it's in that folder. You can also see here, the thing I love about all of the Google applications is it's constantly auto saving. So these notes that I'm taking are automatically saving, and kind of see that up here at the top. It says all changes are saved in Drive. So I don't have to worry about if my computer crashes or I lose my internet connection and losing any work. So it's always auto saving. So that's kind of a nice thing. You don't have to worry about actually, you know, saving anything. It does it for you. You have all your formatting options up here, which makes it really nice. You can share directly from a document. So maybe if Victoria is showing homes to them and I want her to see, you know, the things that were important, I could share this particular document only with Victoria. So now you can see I went back one level and there are those notes that I created. Same holds true for Google Sheets and Google Slides. Sheets is just like Excel. So again, this should look very, very similar if you're used to working in Microsoft Excel. And say someone emails you, for example, or you have a document that you've already created and you use a lot that's already in Excel, it's very simple to just convert that into a Google Sheets document. And I've not had much issue with stuff converting over pretty seamlessly. So I would imagine for the, you know, mid to above average user, you guys shouldn't have any issues either. But that's kind of how you create additional documents. There it is, it auto-saved. Okay, and then the same thing with Google Slides. I won't spend too much time on Google Slides. It's like a PowerPoint presentation. Again, it works very seamlessly. So if you create a lot of presentations or you have a virtual listing presentation, you might want to explore Google Slides. Any questions on slides or sheets or docs before we move on? I do want to show you one really cool thing. So let's say I have a notes sheet that I use for all my clients. I like to ask them, you know, the same questions and get all that information, blah, blah, blah. I know there's a lot of gibberish on here, but let's just say the first two things I always ask are, you know, what are your names and what are your birthdays? At some point, I'm going to want to have this file and like use it for my new client, right? Maybe the Joneses are some new clients of mine. So because of the auto saving, it's important to note that you'll want to first make copies before you start editing a document. Because if you think to how it works in Microsoft Word, you can always just start making edits and then go to File and Save As. Well, you don't have that in Google Docs. So just one little quick note that will kind of save your sanity. Say I'm ready to take this notes sheet and start it for a new client. I'm going to go to File, and the first thing I want to do is make a copy. And I'm going to rename it. Like I said, my next client that I'm working with is Jones. So I'm just going to retitle it Jones Notes. And instead of saving it in the Smith folder, I need to save it in the Jones folder. Again, this is how my brain works by last name. So I'm going to go back a couple levels, and here's my clients folder. I don't have a Jones folder yet, so I'm going to create one. And maybe I want to put it in the purchase folder. And again, this is just a suggestion. This is however your brain works, do that. And now I'm going to tell Google to put this Jones Notes document in the Jones purchase folder. And then okay. And so now what happened is I have sort of the template from whatever I used on Smith's, but now it's saved in my Jones folder. So what I did there again really quick is I just made a copy. And I do that mostly because of the auto saving that's happening in Google, which is really great, but you do have to make that one little step, which is make a copy before you start editing. So now if I go back to my clients, now I've got Jones. So really quickly, I made a copy of that notes sheet and I created the Jones folder just kind of within a couple clicks. And now I can start adding to their particular folder all the information about their purchase. I've seen some agents that like to organize by year. So they might have like a 2020 folder and then they might break it down by, buy and sell, listing, purchase, whatever. Some agents remember addresses better than names. So I've seen agents organize it by address. Again, sky's the limit. Whatever makes sense for your brain and how you like to organize, you can do so. And look at what you already have and how you have stuff saved like in your My Documents, because that's probably what's going to work best for you as you start to possibly migrate stuff into Google Drive. All right, Victoria, what am I forgetting?
I think you've hit it all, Christy.
Awesome. So I hope that was helpful for you. I would probably just suggest if you're kind of new and this seems a little intimidating, you can't screw it up. Just get in your Drive, start creating documents or folders, and I think you'll really like it. Oh, I did want to show you one other quick thing. From your email, it's really simple to add files directly from Google Drive. So I'm going to send Victoria a message. And instead of just attaching like I would if I was going to pull something off of my desktop or out of my documents, I'm going to kind of move over a little bit to that triangle, which is the Google Drive icon. And I'm going to click on that. And then I can navigate to wherever the document is that I want to send her. We'll do that notes sheet again from the Smith folder, or I could do, any of these items. And you'll kind of see here, if I was going to send her that Google Docs of the Smith notes, it doesn't allow me to do it as an attachment, but it allows me to do it as a link. So what that means is there will be a link in my email to Victoria to that document, which is kind of nice because it's a little bit more protected than if I was just adding an attachment. I know a notes sheet isn't probably like a great example of that, but there, of course, are a lot of sensitive documents that we do share during a transaction. So the nice thing about doing a link versus an attachment, if Victoria then, forwards that email onto somebody else and there's an attachment, anyone could access that attachment. The difference with a link is that only victoria.thomas@talktalker.com can access that because that's who I sent that link to. So it's a little bit more secure. So again, I think it's always important to mention that when we're talking in real estate. Now, if I go back to that Jones folder really quick, or I'm sorry, Smith folder, add more stuff in it, hang on. I can do attachments of like PDFs, for example. So let's go. I think I dropped a PDF in there. That showing report. Now I have the option, because it's a PDF, I can do either one. I can do it as a Drive link, again, a little bit more secure, or like an old school attachment. and it drops it to the bottom of that email just like it would any other attachment. Okay, so we did that through that insert files using Drive. Okay, and then I can shoot that off. And Victoria will receive it. And see, this is that security that I was talking about. It says, someone needs access, victoria.thomas@talk2tucker, and I can say, yep, I want to share it with her. Again, view or edit, depending on what it is, and then send. Okay, and so then off it goes. So now Victoria can see that note sheet. And back in my folder, there are those two little people. So it's reminding me that I shared that with somebody, and in this case, it was Victoria. So awesome, awesome opportunities for collaboration in Google Drive. Hopefully your wheels are spinning about how you can use this. Again, I would say the most applicable thing I have found is sharing those sort of closing documents at the end of a transaction with my buyers or sellers, just so they constantly have access to it. And of course, clients do have access to the stuff that they've signed in Dotloop. However, unless they kind of create their own free Dotloop account, it's a little disjointed, like they would have to dig through their email for each additional or each individual document that they may have signed. And it just might be hard for them to find stuff. So I'm a big fan of making things really easy for people. And one of those things that I think is a valuable service that I can provide is to say, hey, we just closed on your transaction. When I get back to my desk, I'm going to share with you all of the important documents in a folder, and then you'll have access to those forever. Should you need anything, it'll be easy to grab. And then, of course, reach out to me if you have any questions or need anything else. So I think that's sort of a nice, easy way to share with buyers and sellers. And it's kind of the same as either sharing a binder or like a zip drive. I just think this is a little bit cleaner and a little bit more my speed. But if I had a client that wasn't super techie, I probably wouldn't do this. I'd probably just give them a binder of documents. So use what makes sense for you and your people.
Hey,
All
Christy,
right, I'm going to pause again for questions. Oh, go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah, I had a question of how do you get a showing report from email into Drive? And it just dawned on me, do you want to show them how easy it is to upload an attachment right out of your email into Drive?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let me find, oh, here it is. Victoria just happened to send me something with an attachment. So it's really simple to get something attached to an email into Drive. So I'm in an email, hopefully you guys can see it here. Here's the attachment. I can either download it, which is probably what you're used to doing if you're saving stuff to your computer, or you can save directly to Drive. So if I click on, again, little triangle, it's gonna just kind of drop it in my Drive, but I always click organize because I try to keep myself as organized as I possibly can. So once I click organize, it's like asking me, hey, where do you want that to go? So I'm gonna put it back in that little Jones file or Smith file, one of those, so I don't get confused later. So I'm just kind of clicking into the folders of where I want to put it. Yep, this is it. Boom. And it just put that particular attachment into the folder that I told it to. So if I go back to my Drive, back to that folder, there it is. It was that fireplace safety. So really simple. It saves you from having to like download something and re-upload. Just kind of makes it easy peasy. Great questions. What else? Cool. Well, as we kind of wrap up, I think Victoria and I will stick around for just a few more minutes if anyone has questions. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys today, and it kind of gets your wheels spinning on how you can work a little bit more paperlessly and virtually with a free tool from FC Tucker that has you kind of covered, and you're never gonna have to worry about your computer crashing and losing docs or running out of storage space again. Last call for group questions, Victoria. Anything good we want to share with the group?
I had another question about like if it was a showing report out of an email or an entire email, you would just want to make that email into a PDF. So you would go like you were going to print the email. So if Christy hops back into her email and goes up, I think, is it the right-hand corner? Yeah,
Yep.
if you go to that print icon, when you choose what type of, or like the destination of the printer, print to PDF is an option. And so it would just save it as a PDF, or you can save it directly to Google Drive. And then it's going to probably ask you where. Does it ask you where it goes?
It didn't.
Oh, it didn't. Okay. So you could save it as a PDF and then upload it, or go directly to Google Drive and then just hop in your drive and find it.
Yeah, sometimes my only beef is sometimes stuff lands in there unorganized.
Yeah, that's why I almost prefer to save it as a PDF and then upload it, because I know right where it's going.
But here I am back in my drive, and there's that email I just saved, and it's not really in a folder right now, so I could, again, right click and move it to wherever it makes sense, right?
Yep.
Cool.
I had another question about if someone shares a file, would the person that they shared the file with continue to have access, even if this person were to retire? Like if the agent were to retire or leave the company? I didn't say that, but do they still have access to it?
Great question. So if they no longer are using the email account that you shared it with, then the answer would be no. So let's say somebody no longer is using their christy.kolabski@TalkTucker email, and that's who you shared it with, then they would no longer see it. But once you share something, just of course bear in mind, even if you share it as view only, anyone can always download that information and do whatever the heck they want with it, which they could with anything. But the key there is they're not editing your version of it if you give view only access. But you can always go in there later and just sort of modify. Oops, I'm not doing what I wanted to show. You can always go in later and modify the access level. So here was that thing I shared with Victoria. And I'm like, she doesn't need to have that anymore. I could remove her access. It's showing me here it's already shared with her, but I can come in and say, yeah, she doesn't need that anymore. Save. And of course, I can't control if she downloaded it and did anything with it, but I can control that she won't see my future changes. Awesome. Good stuff today, guys. Again, I hope it was helpful. Get in there and use it. You can't break it, and have fun getting organized with Drive.